911 operators, what was your best and worst call? My dad used to work as a 999 call operator. He says the best, or at least the strangest, was an old woman who regularly used to call in saying her house was either being haunted or broken into. She was never quite clear. Apparently, nearly every day she would go up into the attic and find a new half-finished canvas painting, before it mysteriously vanished a few days later. It turns out it was her husband, who had been secretly painting at night all through their marriage, and running a business selling some of these paintings. He had always kept it a secret from her, fearing she would see it as unmanly, but in his senility was forgetting to hide away the paintings in the day. I'm just glad it wasn't someone living in her attic. Worst call for me, by far, was the gentleman who was in his driveway in his big SUV waiting to pull out onto the road. A group of little girls were walking by and he waited. When he thought they were through, he backed up and ended up running over one of them. Neighbors immediately began CPR. Why they had him call 911 himself, I don't know, but I'm thankful he used a landline because I don't think I would have been able to get the address out of him. He was beside himself, hovering and screaming that she's dead. Oh my god, she's dead over and over. The little girl didn't make it. Later that evening, I got a 911 call from his wife. He attempted suicide. Best, I don't know. I can't say any of them are my best ones. That's so heartbreaking. I've posted these before but here they are. Old lady calls, claims she's been kidnapped, held against her will in a strange place, wants the police, doesn't know where she is but the address comes back to a retirement home. After a short while, a nurse comes on, apologizes and says she does this every chance she gets. I report the call to the police anyway as per our training. If you ask for police, I call the police for you even if you hang up. The fear in her voice was horrible. Older to middle-aged lady comes through in an absolute panicked mess. She's got up in the morning and found the cold body of her daughter in bed surrounded by empty pill packages. I put the caller through to the ambulance service and relay the details. Ordinarily I'd hang up and go back on standby for the next call, but since I've judged that the caller is in distress and struggling to communicate, I'm obliged to stay on the line in case dispatch require my assistance further information from our records. So, I'm a silent witness to this poor woman being directed to perform CPR on the very likely long dead body of her daughter until the medics arrived 20 minutes after the start of the call. Had to take a breather after that one. Not a 911 operator but I respond to these types of calls. Had a dispatch from a complainant who was hurt deeply, but not bleeding, is not sure if he is awake or sleeping among other things. When I arrived we quickly found the guy whose first questions were, am I alive? Are you dead? Can I get a hug? And proceeded to start crying until I gave him his requested hug. I managed to convince him to let me give him a ride to the hospital. During the ride he disclosed that he was recently diagnosed bipolar and was coming down off salvia, which explained a lot. Dude was tripping so hard, really glad he wasn't violent. Female. There's alligators in the river. Me. Yes mom, this is Florida. Female. But my kids play and swim in that river. Me. Why do you let your kids play and swim in alligator infested waters? Every body of water in FL is alligator infested. Not a 911 operator, but I work in EMS billing and occasionally have to read the written narrative of ambulance calls. That is, the ambulance crew's written report about the events of the call. The one that sticks out to me most was the time the ambulance crew responds to a report of a 4-year-old that hit a car when chasing after a ball. He seems okay when they arrive, but the parents want the ambulance crew to look him over just to be safe. So they check for internal bleeding, age-appropriate behavior, no broken bones, etc. Everything is looking good, so they ask him how he feels and he says I'm okay, but my ball has a boo-boo. So they check the ball for internal bleeding, age-appropriate behavior, no broken bones, etc. and tell the kid your ball is okay before returning to the ambulance and leaving. I was expecting to hear that he had like huge internal bleedings and died the next day. This made me smile. Posted this before. There are so many calls I remember, and so many that I don't. I've been a dispatcher for the RCMP for 8 years and honestly, you get so many bad and good calls that they all seem to blur together. I was honestly debating whether or not to even post this because it upsets me. I'm not allowed to give exact details, but one of my worst calls was from a little boy. I think he was 5. He was hiding in his closet because his dad was drunk and beating the ever-loving crap out of his mom. He lived in a very rural area, and it was about an hour drive from the nearest police detachment. I stayed on the phone with him for almost 45 minutes. The guys drive fast when there are kids involved, trying to keep him calm. You literally talk about anything that pops into your head. The weather, favorite TV shows, what his favorite toys are. All the while you can plainly hear a woman screaming and crying in the background. And as the calls goes on you can still hear the guy beating her, but her screams turn into grunts and moans. You can't tune it out, because you are constantly typing what you hear. Any details you can get from background noise is valuable to the officers attending. Anyway, the members arrived, arrested the piece of crap and I hung up once they had the kid safe. And then the phone rang again. Because there is no stopping. There's no time to process what just happened and honestly, it's probably for the best. A lot of the time you don't find out the outcome of the call because as I said, there are always more phone ringing. The first year or so, there were calls that bothered me, but as the years went by I learned to compartmentalize. As soon as I hang up the phone now I'm done. Next call. But any calls involving children really gets to me still. I truly enjoy my job because I think that I am genuinely helping people, but I think this job is killing me slowly. I used to be the kindest, gentlest man you would ever meet, but now I find I am very easily angered and annoyed. One of my best calls involved a kid again. A 3-year-old was at a campground with her family and they let her out of their sight for 20 seconds and she wandered down to a creek and drowned. Her mom found her and her father called in. While I was getting details from the understandable distraught father, a random guy camping there was doing CPR managed to resuscitate her. I can't imagine how her parents felt, but it was like physical weight being lifted off of me. But this is kind of a loaded question for a dispatcher really. I told my worst and best memories, but there are so many strange funny calls that I remember as well. And keep in mind, dispatchers tend to develop a fairly dark sense of humor. What some of us would find hilarious would probably shock a normal person. The body can only take so much poison before it starts to wither and die. Thank you for your sacrifice. You make the world a better place. Dispatcher here. Last night we had a loud noise complaint about a loading dock behind a large box store. The caller was complaining that they were making sounds like they are dropping large objects. Well, yeah. Have also had a call for a little chicken crossing the road. Had a kid call in the middle of the woods not knowing exactly where he was. Him and his father were out walking in the fall, in the woods. Never got full story. Tree randomly falls atop his father's head killing him instantly. Boy aged around 13 or so, calls 911 and is freaking out. I advise him and walk him through CPR. He tells me there is blood gushing out the back of his father's head. Okay, father is dead. The boy is now the PT and I'm trying to keep him calm and make him feel like he at least tried. I spoke with him for 15 minutes until the medics got there. He cried and cried. He was confused at where he was and the worst thing ever. Don't leave me, daddy. I can't do this yet without you. You can't leave now. Over and over again. I'm a young guy and this just wrecked me that day. I had to step out and take a walk. Okay, that's enough of this thread. As the others, I am not a 911 operator. However, my mother works as a dispatcher for a local police department. A little under 30 years ago, a really bad storm rolled through. Thunder, lightning, hail, heavy rain, the whole shebang. The storm, once it hit our area, intensified and formed a downburst. The downburst ripped through the border of our town and the neighboring town, ultimately hitting an elementary school and knocking down the wall of the cafeteria where, at the time, students were eating lunch. The storm knocked out power to the entire area. Thinking quickly, my mother ran out to the mobile command unit, a big bus used by the police department for major incidents, fired up the generator, and began dispatching from the bus. A few children unfortunately passed away from the incident, and the incident is still something that we have a memorial for each year. She always said this was the worst call of her career. I was in a relationship with a first responder a while back. Best call I heard about was one about an extremely elderly gentleman stuck up in a tree. He had climbed up to the top of this big maple tree and then forgotten why he was up there. He refused to try to come down, and I guess when the first responders got there, quite a few of the neighbors were standing around with blankets in case he fell. The fire department eventually got him down, although I guess he was kicking and complaining the whole way. Turns out he broke out of a nearby nursing home, where he had been a resident of memory care. The saddest part of that, I guess, is that he probably has no memory of his adventure. He had climbed up to the top of this big maple tree, and then forgotten why he was up there. A metaphor for life, really. Not an operator, but as a young kid my brother told me about the concept of 911. I didn't believe him, so I called and said our house was on fire. Not long after I got a stern talking to by my mom and a couple of policemen. Working in FL during a small hurricane, a lady in a rich condo in rich people part of town calls because her AC is out. I explained to her that, no crap, because hurricane, and she explains in a panic that her windows don't open and she's running out of air. I try to explain to her, but she tells me she's using up her air and hangs up. The worst call involved taking a call from someone I know. I have two best calls. The more serious one was a call from a woman who found her sister hanging. Dispatched immediately, and the sister made it with no complications caused by lack of oxygen. Especially good since she was hanging for quite a bit. Being a part of saving that girl, even if my influence was small, made my month. A second best call because it made me laugh. Man calls saying his vehicle is rolled over. I think it's an accident at first and the vehicle flipped, but nope. Turns out he peed someone off pretty good and they got a few friends, picked the car up together, and set it on its roof. Then they booked it while he ran out screeching at them in his boxers. Miraculously there were only minor dents and scratches on the hood. Worst call, mother found her baby unresponsive with signs of obvious loss of life. That one cut deep. Back in the 1970s those old style VW Beetles ended up in a lot of strange places courtesy of groups of strong young men. Not an operator, but I was at a small, private airport and met with an officer responding to a 911 call. It was a windy day out and apparently a woman had called the police to complain about a plane that was stuck in the air. It was just a small, underpowered plane struggling to make forward progress in the wind. Cop was laughing the whole time as he was investigating this stuck airplane. Reminds me of a bird I saw once growing up. The wind was so strong that the bird couldn't make any forward progress. It was beating its little wings as hard as it could, but was just hovering in the same spot. I am not a 911 operator, but once when I was a kid I called 911 really quick and then hung up, just to see what might happen. The first responders showed up, talked to my mom, realized everything was fine, and I got off with nothing more than a stern talking to. It had a happy ending however, since one of the first responders ended up dating and eventually marrying my mom. They've been together happily for over 2 decades now. Yes, so my mama needs someone to make her some breakfast in the mornings. Please send your most caring officer. I'm a former jail officer for a small county jail. Dispatch was in the same building, so I used to sit and talk with the dispatchers and hear calls that came in. The best one I heard was a guy who started out the call with "I hit a freaking beefalo, cow buffalo hybrid." Dispatcher and him share a laugh and she asked if the car was disabled and blocking the road. He said number. I ran off the road and ended up past the fence where the goddamn beefalo ought to be. When I worked in a 911 center and was in training, I got a call from a small convenience store worker wanting to report a theft. Sounded like a pretty typical shoplifting where he just wanted to file a report with the cops. Went through normal procedures getting info, and before hanging up the guy nonchalantly mentioned that the store owner had gotten a cut on his hand. It turns out it had been an armed robbery with a knife, and the guy had cut the store owner, and no one thought to call the cops till a couple hours later. My trainer then got on the phone and basically yelled at this guy for waiting so long to report an armed robbery. Armed robberies are bad for business. It creates a lot of work for the manager, and there isn't really anything the police or corporate can do beyond putting a signature on some insurance papers. So if you can just get the theft written off as a shoplifting with no suspects, then that's much better for the business. I'm going to wade in on this one for 999 as opposed to 911. I only spent one evening with the call handlers when I was studying towards a paramedic degree, but one evening was enough. The call that will always stand out to me was an elderly man waking up in the morning to find that his wife had died in bed beside him during the night. I'll never forget the fear and emotion in his voice, and I can't imagine how that scenario must have felt. Best, I have fully delivered 2 baby girls in the 13 years I have been a 911 operator. Full delivery from start to finish before the ambulance arrived. The first one I will remember most. St. Patrick's Day 2007. Guy calls in about 5 minutes from his house saying he got a call that his wife's water just broke. After asking how far apart the contractions are, he stated 10 plus mins. Having to get other 911 lines, I told him to call back when he got home. Well, a couple mins later he did, and I happened to answer the call. Her contractions at this point were less than 2 minutes apart now. I had him lay her down and get ready for delivery. This was their second child, BTW. A couple pushes later I hear a brand new baby girl wailing in the background. Now it usually doesn't take an ambulance that long to get to where they were, but other calls and lack of resources that day led to a 11 minutes response time. Turned out that these people were friends of a friend, but I didn't know that until after they called the local news to come and do an interview with me and share the story the next week. I got to hold the baby as well. Worst, again, anything with a child is usually the ones you remember. It was a domestic issue that I was on the line with the female half. The male half was armed with a gun and looking for the female's mother that was hiding in a closet upstairs in the 6-month-old's bedroom. He left and officers arrived. They went upstairs to talk with the female and her mother. I stayed on the phone, which the female had put down next to the child's crib. Some officers that were just arriving outside saw that the male was walking back in the house some 30 seconds later. As he was coming up the stairs to the second floor, the officers stepped out and the male half pulled his gun. The officers shot him multiple times in the chest area. BTW, he lived. What I remember from this call isn't so much the details above, but the guttural scream that came from the mother of the child. As I didn't know the setup of exactly what was going on at the time, I thought the male had shot the child. There is nothing more unsettling and unnerving to hear than a parent when a child is injured. Anyways, those are my stories, and I hope that when people read these they will just take the time to relax and enjoy life. I was a part-time 911 dispatcher in 1982. Got a call from a frantic woman. Her 4-year-old girl was climbing on her dad's Harley and it tipped over. The clutch level went in her eye. I got EMS and rescue rolling and calmed them down. Then, I heard in the background talk that they were going to lift the bike off the girl. I said emphatically not to do that. Long story short, the girl saved her vision with no long-term effects. I ran into her in 2016 and she's doing fine with no vision or cosmetic issues. Amazing. Former firefighter, not a dispatcher. We once had a call for a dog on a roof. A guy was working on his roof and stepped inside for a break. While he was inside, his dog climbed the ladder to check things out. Problem is, he was not coming down on his own and there was no way a 120-pound owner was going to get a determined 100-pound dog down that ladder. We sent the ladder truck over, got the dog blindfolded, he was pretty friendly, just scared, and lifted him down with the ladder. Fun times. I bet the dog threw it was an adventure. Friday night I called the police because drunk teenage girls were laying on railroad tracks recording videos of each of them humping each other. I felt kind of bad because normally I'm like, hey, whatever floats your boat. But they were real pee and I wasn't sure they'd be able to move fast if a train came. They can make all the humping videos they like from the safety of a house. You absolutely did the right thing. I'm not an operator, but I'll share this story of mine. My buddy lives on a really busy intersection and we were really drunk at his house one night and there was a huge accident right outside. I called 911 and the call went like this: 911, what's your emergency? Why, oh, I just saw this huge freaking accident, holy crap, you need freaking cops and ambulances right now. Okay, so where are you? I am at my buddy's house, holy crap. So the address please. As a 911 operator I could punch you for that, lol. If you only catch one tower when you call from a cell phone, it is hard to narrow down where you are at until I can grab it for your location. But good on you for calling. When I was about 8 I was in Boy Scouts. We went to a police station as a field trip. We sat in the waiting area for a tour. While we were waiting, a kid, who's always been a troublemaker, used the payphone, dialed 911 and hung up. Not even 30 seconds later, a female cop burst through the door and fury in her eyes and yelled, "Who called 911?" No one fessed up, so we got a long lecture on how serious it is for prank calling 911. Stupid kid never got caught. Last I heard, he's in jail right now, ironically. Fessed up. It's slang for confessed. The one that made me almost quit. Lady calls and says she was talking to her friend on FB. He made some suicidal comments, then went dark. She has no phone number or address for him. I think he lives in XXXX or YYYY, both of which are in another county. I get his name, common name, and approx age, and begin digging, wanting to make sure I knew who they needed to find before I call the neighboring county. I go hard. I end up finding a possible candidate with an address. I call neighboring agency and explain what I've got and ask for a recent number for the address, and tell them if it's right I'll transfer it. Call the number, get an old lady, ask is this the resident of name, and she explains that it's her son, and if I hang on a second she'll get him. She walks into his room to find him completely out of it. I tell her to look around and tell me what she sees. Empty pill bottle. No real surprise. Stay on the line until neighboring county Leo and Ems arrive. Then get off the phone feeling like goddamned Superman. I would have been well within my rights to refer this lady to that agency at the very start and not dig at all, but I made dang sure we had the right address and that help got there because I wanted to do right by my caller. Next day I pick up the phone and hear, neighboring county, requesting mutual aid, ref possible suicide, self-inflicted GSW, same address as last night, same age male as last night. Freaking neighboring county didn't commit him despite downing a bottle of pills, so he shot himself. I about freaking walked out. Jesus. Talk about a failure of the system. It sounds like you were pretty much the only cog in the machine that worked properly that night, and thank you for doing it, regardless of the outcome. I'm sorry for you and everyone involved in that tragedy. Former police call handler in the UK will share one personal favorite with you. During some particularly stormy weather, police emergency. Hello, yes, I'm down by the beach and there is a seal in the water. Well, he just looks like he is struggling a bit. I'm sorry, I'm not entirely sure what you require the police to do. I thought you could come and help it. With all due respect, a seal is an aquatic mammal. If it cannot survive in the ocean, then I'm afraid that's a concept called natural selection. Plus, I'm not sure exactly how much help a police officer will be to the seal. Call ends. I'm informed a few hours later that the person then complained about me. Speechless. We have a treaty with the seals that legally bars us from trying to assist in cases like this. Sometimes it sucks, but with diplomacy we have to look at the big picture. Before 911 system was installed, I was working as a phone operator in MN. Got a call from a satellite phone. Guy hit a deer and was stranded on the side of the road. Didn't know if he was in Canada or the US. Couldn't give me any landmarks because all he saw was snow, and was hoping that we could track him. I asked my supervisor, who could only advise him the call was costing him $2 a minute. He was afraid if he hung up the phone he would lose signal. I stayed on the line with him while my supervisor called the local police chief at home. She asked him to come to the call center and talk to the lost guy. It went something like this. Police chief, do you know where you are at? Lost guy, no. Police chief, where was the last place you remember being? Lost guy, at a restaurant. Police chief, do you remember the name of the restaurant? Lost guy, hold on, it's on my receipt. Police chief, while you're looking, how long ago were you at the restaurant? Lost guy, about an hour and a half ago. Police chief, how long after you left the restaurant was it before you hit the deer? Lost guy, oh, about 5 minutes. Police chief, and the name of the restaurant? Lost guy, reads restaurant name, address and phone number. Police chief, okay, stay put. We'll send somebody out to get you. My supervisor lets the police chief call the restaurant. The restaurant gives the police chief the number for the local police department. The police chief in MN calls the police station in Canada. They send somebody out to get the guy. The police chief asked to make the phone calls from the call center instead of going into his office because we called him out to deal with what he thought was an idiot call. If the guy had just looked at his receipts to start with, he wouldn't have been stuck on the side of the road for an hour and a half. He might have incurred $10 in phone charges instead of $1,500 for an international call lasting over an hour. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.